Welcome to CS Office Hours. We are finishing up our change management series with best practices and strategies for a successful CS platform deployment. And I'm super excited about this. It's a great way to follow up and sort of conclude with all of the other sessions we've done around change management. Today we have both Dishman from Totango and Kristi Faltorusso from Client Success. And this is literally what they do for a living. They talk to people every day about how to deploy CS platforms successfully. And so I knew that it would be really helpful to sort of talk through sort of the do's and don'ts and best ways to plan and how it really connects to change management, because it really does. So, and Kristi, do you want to say hi real quick? Say hello.
Kristi, you go first. Talk cheese.
I'm not going to talk cheese. Everyone is hearing me complain about cheese. Hi, everyone. I'm so thrilled to be here. I see so many friendly faces and familiar names, and so great to be a part of this chat. So thank you so much for inviting me. My name is Kristi Faltorusso. I'm the Chief Customer Officer at Client Success. We have a customer success management solution where we help our customers manage from new to renew, so that entire post-initial sales lifecycle. I've spent the past 12 years in customer success roles, building, scaling, and transforming teams across the globe in B2B hypergrowth companies. This is a huge passion of mine. I've been deploying customer success technology for the past 10 years. And so not just using client successes, but other solutions in the market as well. So I've got vast experience in how I've been able to drive change in organizations through software. And I'm really excited about today's topic.
Yay. Chris?
Awesome. Yeah. So Chris Dishman, I am the SVP of CS at Totango. Formerly it was at On24, which is a webinar-based marketing platform. Was there for 18 years, deployed a few different technologies as I kind of went through that, and we went through the IPO and that whole fun thing. And that's a story for another day. But, like Kristi, I'm super passionate about customer success. And like everybody else on this call, is the reason why you're here at either 4:30 or 7:30, depending on where you're sitting. But, I do love customer success. And as you said, one of the things that is fun about the job that Kristi and that I have is we get to work with people just like you every day to try to help make sure that you're tooled up and you've got all the right processes and strategies and everything else to make sure that you help your customers be successful. So it's a fun place to be, a fun and exciting role for me now here at Totango, and looking forward to the conversation. We're gonna have a good time.
Excellent. Thank you both. All right, let's dig in. Okay, we want to share with you how to set yourself up for success. And so often people want to just go and buy a tool, and they just sort of hope and pray that that's going to solve their problems. And I think we've all written and spoken extensively about the fact that that's just not the case. If anything, that will exacerbate your problems. If you don't have your strategy in place, you're going to have some challenges. So that kind of gets us to the first point. Chris, do you want to maybe start us off here?
Absolutely. So, it's funny, we're all in customer success. When we think about coming in with a strategy, it's just like when you start looking at how you're going to work with your customer, you start with and I'm going to use the customer success terminology, right? You're starting with an outcome first approach. So just like that, when you start to launch a CSP, you really want to come in with a strategy and kind of some desired outcomes that you're looking for and a problem that you're solving. One of the things that we see over and over again is people come in and and we'll let Kristi talk about number two, but they come in with that number two mindset. And they don't have a strategy, and they don't really know what they're planning on executing with it. And then they just start wanting to import various pieces of data that don't make any sense and don't have any potential purpose, right? So as you think about, coming in and launching a CSP or anything that you're going to be using to help in your efficiencies, start with that outcome in mind. And then it allows you to kind of back into how you're going to execute on that strategy. And then as we talk about change management, that trickles down through or trickles through the entire team and how the team is going to use or not use a particular technology as well. So it's just important that you leverage that strategy and then communicate and kind of distribute that through the team.
Great. Kristi, anything to add there?
Yeah, I would just say, like, to add on to Chris's point here, it's just really critical that you have a strategy and that you've built something. I also recommend to folks, do it manually before you're trying to have a system do it for you, right? Because that's how you're actually going to be able to test these processes. And are these the right things that you need to be focusing on? So it is really important that you've been thoughtful about what the strategy looks like, what you're trying to achieve, but that you've also tested it a little bit. I find that there's a lot of folks who come in and maybe have a strategy in mind, but they've not put any pen to paper. They've not done any of the legwork, and they're just assuming that they're going to kind of build it as they go and how to kind of have this strategy that's being deployed through the solution. And I'm just telling you, like, that strategy, that approach doesn't necessarily work. Everything that I've ever done in any of the systems I've built, I've always done it manually before, or maybe like, manually, or like with free tools, and kind of hacked something together just to test it, right? Are these the right things? Because that will also enable you to purchase the right system too, right? When you're able to see, like, what is my strategy and how do I need to get there? Taking that extra step of doing these things manually first will actually help you figure out, what exactly do I need to execute against this?
Great
Yeah.
call.
And I would say too, I find that a lot of folks don't take the time to figure out their customer base segmentation or their customer journey. And if you don't have some of those building blocks in place, it's really hard then to know what to implement and set up, once you are setting up your tool. And so then you want to have playbooks, and you're just going to have these random playbooks. Are they even the right playbooks? Because if they aren't moving the needle towards retention, towards expansion, towards adoption, right? Then how would you even know that you should have a playbook for that? How does it figure into what you want your customer to do from beginning, through renewal? Never the end, right? They always come back.
Right.
All right. So did that kind of cover the first one and the second one, or was there more that we should really sort of dig into on that miracle solution?
I would say on the second one, for the expectations, like, I think the thing that I see the most, and Chris, you let me know if you see this also, is that leaders who have used a solution in their previous roles, they come in thinking that out the gate, like, oh, I use this somewhere else. And so I need this as part of my tech stack to be successful. So one of the first things they end up doing when they get to a company is they go out and they repurchase that same technology, which I would just highly advise against. And not because I don't think that you should be, listen, I'm all for second order revenue, right? You find something you like, it works great, rebuy it. I appreciate all of our customers that come back. However, you don't know what the problems are in your business yet. So if you're a new leader coming into an organization, do not come in guns blazing, asking for 6 figures to go buy a tool set, right? Figure out what the problems are that you're solving for. And this goes back to those expectations, right? Because somebody who's used technology and who's been very successful using it before has the expectation that they're going to be able to use it again and be equally successful. And I'll tell you, for years, I bought Gainsight. Anyone who knows me, like, I was the Gainsight spokesgirl. Like, I was probably the 1% of people that like used all the features, loved it, talked about it, went to all their events, spoke at all their events. And I thought I could only ever be successful using Gainsight. I would always go and demo every solution every time I got into a new company, but I knew I was the Gainsight gal and that's where I was going. Let me just tell you, I've spent the past 2.5 years using Client Success now at Client Success. And I'm like, gain what? Like, you don't, it's like, you can't, we get so like kind of in our heads about the things that we've used that have worked before. But if you don't know what the problems are that you're solving for, you might not need what you think you need, or what you thought worked before. Like, I don't know. That's part of the expectation setting for me, is that just because something worked before doesn't mean it's going to work again. Customer success is not a one size fits all. It's not even a one size fits most approach. Every company is going to have new things, new challenges to solve for. So just be thoughtful about what it is that you need and then set the right expectations against it.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. And it kind of goes into point 4, right? It's clear on the what and flexible on the how, because you can't walk in and assume that the tool that you had before is going to be implemented the same way as, what you did before, and that you have the same data sources, that you have the same, like you said, needs or strategy. So totally agree with you. And I think having an open mind, and even going back to what you were saying, Kristi, about the first piece, which is map it out ahead of time. That's part of that strategy. And then test the strategy. Make sure that, before you go, like you said, guns blazing, buying, a tool set, test it out and make sure that you have a very clear vision on what that needs to accomplish, because that'll inform your decision on what tool you buy, right?
Well, and Chris, I thought it was sort of interesting when we were talking before, not to bash Gainsight, we're not here to bash anybody, but you also had used Gainsight, but you weren't successful with it and had to rip it out. Like,
Right.
tell us a little bit about that process, because I think we've all sort of been there, done that, but it's nice to hear someone admit it.
Yeah, absolutely. I like Kristi, I was early Gainsight, lover. I was in their, customer advisory board 1.0. I got a thumb drive somewhere that shows that I am, but what was interesting is, we launched it, and a lot of it has to do with the, and Gainsight's a fantastic product.
Mhm.
The problem that I had was I didn't know what I didn't know when we went in to set it up the first time. And so we set it up in a way that just didn't work well for us. And it wasn't flexible in the architecture and how we needed to move our business. And so after 2 years of dealing with that, we were like, okay, we either one have to blow this up and start all over with them again, or we have to switch to another tool, which we switched to Totango. And it was just a little more flexible in how the architecture was. So, again, it's wasn't so much of a Gainsight problem. It was really more of a, hey, did we plan well? Did we have all the right insight? And that's where, and I love the phrase, I didn't know what I didn't know when we launched it. And we had some strategy, but we missed some marks. And that's ultimately what caused the pain of having to go through that process. But again, I think it's pretty interesting in that there are a number of tools out there that I probably could have used. I've looked at Salesforce. I don't think Salesforce is the right tool for most of what we do, but they certainly came in and wanted to sell me hard on switching over. But again, if you know what your processes are, if you know the how you're planning on executing on that daily basis with what you're trying to achieve, that'll help inform the decision on what you do and how you do it.
Yeah. And just backtracking a little bit to number 3 on reaching across the silos, the buy-in throughout the process. One of the key things that I've helped folks with is basically putting together sort of a requirements list. We put it in a Google sheet, and we had sort of like, what do we need it to do? We did it outcome based, but like, what do we need? What do we need for reports? What do we need for workflows? What do we need just basic functionality? What other tools does it need to work with, right? And then we had sort of in these other columns, who needed it? Who was it important for, right? And making certain that you understand then what are your actual needs. And we had everyone contributing across all the different groups, because it wasn't really just CS that needed these reports and needed this information. There were ways in which marketing needed it, sales, product, operations. There were a few different groups that really needed to weigh in. And so have some sort of process for buying in, and for and making certain that everybody is on board, and also check in with your engineering or your IT, about all of your systems and how are they going to connect up, and making certain you have sort of your data ducks in a row as well, right? I see some notes over here. I use CS data every day from Christine, who's in customer marketing. Exactly. Like when you think about it, it's being used all over. What were there other things that we wanted to say about the buy-in throughout the process, Chris and Kristi?
No, I would just be thoughtful about, like, listen, the expectation isn't also that those teams will be in this platform, right? So if you have a customer success platform, you don't need the expectation shouldn't be that everyone across your organization is likely going to have a license and have access to it. But we do need to focus on democratization of data. And that means making sure this data is accessible wherever those teams are, even if you have to export it and share it in a sheet, but you have to be giving access to this information to the teams who need it. Because the reality of it is, customer success does not own the customer. I cannot preach this enough. Every time I talk to a CSM who's like, I own the customer, I'm like, false, you do not. The company owns the customer. Everyone works to support it. Know your role. This is why RACIs exist. But the reality of it is we all need that data, right? It's so interesting to see how organizations are quick to democratize the use of a CRM like Salesforce or HubSpot, but the CSPs don't have that same kind of distribution model. And it's probably because they don't want to buy more licenses and it can get costly. And I get that, but you do have to make sure that if you are the CS team person whatever, then you're responsible for this part of the tech stack. You have to make sure that data is making its way to those other key stakeholders, but not only that they have access to it, that they understand how to use it, right? And that they can use it effectively.
Yeah.
100%.
Anything to add?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, 100%. And it is interesting because the more you start leveraging and, you know, when you think about it, just as Christine said, using CS data every day. I mean, we all do because we're in CS, but guess what? Our sales reps do, our account managers do, you know, I mean, like if you're leveraging that data for an SDR, for an account executive that's looking for expansion, guess what? That's gold, right? The data that we have in these platforms that we're driving around health and around expansion opportunities and stuff like that is exactly what they're looking for. And you know, in past companies and current companies that I've been working with, and I mean, everybody sees the value in that. So you, as Kristi said, you've got to make sure that we are that you're leveraging that across the board, that people not only understand where it is, they understand how to get it, and that you're making sure that data is available, because they're not going to sign into your CSP every single time to get that. They're going to work in Salesforce if they're in sales, and that's totally fine. You just have to be able to make sure that data makes its way there in a way that's digestible for them.
Right. Right. So then depending upon how your organization is set up, who actually owns renewals or expansions or upsells or cross sales and, you know, all those different things, it might need to be going back and forth. Know that, identify that. You know, if it's something where your CSMs are going to handle that, then you need a CSP that's going to allow you to do that upsell process without having to leave the platform, right? So know those types of things and have those as requirements. We talked a little bit already, I think, about the what and, you know, clear on the what and flexible on the how. Is there anything else you want to add to that as we kind of go through these?
No, I think it's just a mindset. It's part of how we like onboard our customers into the partnership. It's part of our onboarding portal. It's one of our core values that we say is be clear on what it is that you're trying to do, and then be flexible on how we do it. Because folks that come in with a specific rigid framework of like, I need it to be 3 clicks and the button has to be purple and this has to live here, like you're never going to be successful, because no technology will ever meet your exact requirements. So as long as you're clear on what it is that you're trying to do, let the partners that you choose to work with, let them guide you on how to get there, right? That's part of the partnership. Got to trust them a little bit.
Well said. CRMs and CSPs, system of record, system of action.
Yeah, this is one that I love, and this actually came from a customer of ours that I was talking with, and you know, I've had a number of conversations with people who have Salesforce, and when I was at On24, actually Salesforce came in and they said, hey, you know, we can replace Totango, and I said, oh, okay, great, show me a demo. And 3 weeks later, I got this really fancy dashboard. I mean, it was amazing looking, and I was like, oh, this is pretty sick. And I was like, can it do this, and this? And they're like, we'll get back to you. We need to go develop that. And I'm like, yeah, no, thanks. All right. I mean, and really the things that I were asking about, and it's not a slam on Salesforce. Salesforce is an incredible system, but it's a CRM system, and it has a very specific purpose, just like a CSP, you know, has things that are very specific to what we need as customer success professionals, what we need it to do. And a lot of that has to do with ingesting, understanding data, and then taking action or driving action and behaviors around that for workflows, et cetera. So if you're, you know, to me, Salesforce has some of that, but it doesn't have the level that we need to be able to do that in an agile kind of format. And so one of our customers came in and they had said, you know, Salesforce is our system of record, you know, and Totango is our system of action. I was like, I really like that, and I think I'm going to use it pretty much every day now for the rest of my life. So, or at least the next couple of months. So, but yeah, no, it's I think it made a lot of sense. It resonated for sure.
Yep. That's funny. So Ron Stevens over in the chat is saying that salespeople don't even use just Salesforce, right? Yeah. So like, yeah. So even, you know, think about what the tools are. Although I do think it's helpful to have a main place that is sort of your source of truth and working through that, right?
But like, I think of our sales organization, we have Salesforce, we have Outreach, we have a tool for forecasting, and I still find myself in spreadsheets. So imagine if I need to follow up with a customer where I need to see their telemetrics, I need to see their adoption, I need to see their survey results from 6 months ago. Salesforce doesn't have it. So like,
Mm.
what are we doing here? So the whole just use Salesforce, I think is hilarious because I'm in sales. I don't just use Salesforce. So how do I expect a CSM, a CS leader to just use Salesforce?
Oh, yeah.
Listen,
Right.
it's a big push right now, I think, with everyone trying to consolidate budgets and trying to cut back on their spend. Everyone's trying to consolidate into one thing. And so what I can just advise all CS leaders is just understand how you are using and driving value and driving the business forward with your CSP, or it will be the next part of your tech stack to go. And let me just tell you something. Once your organization has allowed you to have it and then has taken it away, getting the budget to get it again, highly unlikely. Highly unlikely. I have yet to see anybody, not just my customers, just anybody who has lost budget from a CSP as part of a consolidation effort, get that money back.
Yeah.
So just be very clear on how you're driving value from it. And this goes back to, again, all of the points that we listed out before this, right? Coming in with the strategy, having realistic expectations, all of those things are going to help you really understand the value of this technology and the power of it. But you've got to be able to articulate that business case back internally, because that is, if you're not able to do that and not able to prove that ROI, you are going to have a heck of a time being able to keep that.
Yeah. Trevor, you have a question?
Yeah, I'm not sure if we're able to hop in and ask things, but when it comes
Sure.
to
I can't hear you very well. Got to speak up.
can you hear me a little bit better now?
Almost.
Yeah. Good. Continue. I'll figure it out.
No. Well, put it in the chat if nothing else. Okay, Trevor, we do want to get your questions. I just couldn't hear you. Were really soft. Okay, put your question in the chat if you can. All right. Why don't we, in the meantime, we'll go to build and deploy in stages and what we're talking about in terms of being agile and that.
Yeah, this was is something that I'm pretty passionate about, which is really, and it's just keeping it simple. I did a podcast with Tain that I think went out last week, and it was really kind of centered around this, which was, you know, the concept of, and Kristi, I know you've seen this as well. People come in with a strategy, but it's like War and Peace, and you go, okay, no, that's not going to work. It's way too much. It's way too complicated. You know, so the best thing to do and the best way to kind of get quick value on these is to kind of build and deploy something like just like you would a journey, but do it in simple, I'm going to call it bite-sized pieces, right? So you roll out, you know, something, you measure the success of that. You're looking constantly at the data that you're getting back from that. And then you're going to, you know, make changes. You're going to make some adjustments. You're going to fail. It's part of the process. So, you know, when you do that and you roll something out and you go, okay, well, this didn't work the way I thought it was. Let me retool and go back, or this worked better than I thought it did. Let me do more of this. And then you continue to kind of measure and iterate and adjust and launch that. So it's one of the things that we constantly try to keep our people, you know, our customers that come into Totango, we want to keep them from just don't try to boil the ocean. Just take a couple of bites out of what you're doing. Let's make sure that we get some success quickly. And then you can build on that and show the success. And Kristi, you mentioned earlier, and I think this is huge, which is, you know, and I hear it every day when I'm talking with our customers, is you got to make sure that you as a CS leader are able to prove the value of the CSP that you've got. Like, what is it doing for you? How is it saving you money, efficiency? What is it giving you from a visibility standpoint? And so, you know, these types of things, building and deploying in those stages and kind of iterating on it is going to help you get a little quicker value and then be able to share that value up, you know, with your organization.
And another thing I was thinking about too, and I don't know if this was on your mind, Kristi, but as you start to deploy different workflows and playbooks and things like that, it's not automatic that your team is just going to use it. You need to think about how much is changing in their workflow and what they're doing and how you're going to train and get them to adopt, you know. And so that should also, you should think about doing in stages and iterating and helping them along, because chances are how they work is going to change now that they are using a CSP or if they're using a different CSP.
Yeah, Jen, I think you're spot on. I think one of the other things that we try to do is as we're bringing customers on board, right, is there are some parts of the platform that are just given, right? Like you want to make sure that your emails are integrated and you're capturing engagements and some basic functionality that I'm pretty sure every CSP has. And I think getting those things stood up out the gate, those are your immediate wins, just being able to centralize some of that data and get those views in place. But one of the things, and Trevor Clark, who's on the call today too, he's one of our CSMs at Client Success. One of the things that we started asking our customers is like, what is the one thing that you need client success to do that would basically justify the investment you've made here? The one thing. And by asking our customers that, we get out of this, like, I need 30 playbooks and I need my health score to have 50,000 metrics. And they actually just come with like one workflow, like, oh man, yeah, if this could do this for me, that would be a huge win. And guess what? We won't talk about anything else. That is all we're going to talk about until that thing is done, till we've enabled your team, till you're using it, till we've iterated on it, like till we beat that horse. And I will tell you, our customers, like, that's our win. And guess what? Then they realize, oh yeah, you know what? Now I want to do this other thing. And taking that approach, this kind of like focus, this maniacal focus on one thing, it gets everyone excited because you're able to drive some momentum and get those wins and get the team to start driving their change in their behaviors, Jen, right? Like I know you do a lot of the change management. That's how we start. But if you're expecting your team to come in and everything that you're expecting them to do is wildly different than what they've done before, that learning curve is so steep and you're not going to have any success. The only way that you will, and I will say this was a poor leadership tactic by me in the past, is being more stick than carrot, which is basically like, you're going to use this system. And if you do not, you're not doing your job. And if you're not doing your job, you don't have a place here. Goodbye. And I'll tell you that it's effective. No one likes that strategy. You'd rather people feel like change is happening with them, not to them. But if you can bring those folks in on one thing and get them bought in, they'll start to see success and they'll be excited to try other things as well.
And that leans right into lean into champions, right?
Well, that's what I was leaning into for number 7.
Well, yeah. And so I think that gets into then basically also, as you're trying to change the habits of your team, there might be someone on your team who really sort of gets engaged and starts thinking about, oh, we could do this, we could do that. And they start digging in and that sort of thing. Then what you can do is take that excitement of the one person who loves figuring out the tools and have them then show the others. Have them engage with the others on the team, because then the others on the team, who maybe they're not going to go and figure out how to make changes to the tool and how to add to it and that sort of thing, but they might say, oh, can you make it do this? And then they will use those capabilities, right? Because now it has those capabilities because now they've had a voice in it. When we all buy in, it's not just through the buy-in, through the process where you're initially buying it, but it's throughout, and it's throughout adoption as well.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I had this at On24 with the Totango tool, where I had a couple of people that were just nuts about the tool and went in and they're just kind of wired that way. And then today I had a team call at Totango, and one of my CSMs presented some tips and tricks that she uses within our own tool, which was kind of a funny thing that we did. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like, you're crushing it. This is so cool, you know? So, and again, then other people are going, I didn't even think about using that particular segment this way or that, you know, and the next thing you know, it's like, she's actually being a champion on our own tool within our own team on the tool that we support, which is kind of funny, but it just goes to show you that there are going to be people that gravitate towards certain ways of doing business and using technology and things like that, and to leverage those people to help encourage and open your mind into other ways, because you know the quickest way to slow down is to kind of close your mind to thinking you know everything, because it is for you, there's too much out there, we just don't. So you know, it's a great way to let other people kind of teach and help you learn. So
yeah, and like Steve is saying over in the chat, the pull versus push mentality, as
100%.
much as you can have them feel like that. So these are the breakout session questions. If we can get the link to the breakout session notes again over in the chat. Somebody have that link?
I'm on it.
All right, Ashna. I want to also just share with you, there's a number of different resources here. We do have all the change management books, which I recommend highly. There's change management websites. There's also this was a boot camp here video that Kristi shared. I also did a webinar and also wrote an article about building a digital CS program. A lot of that lends itself over to a CS platform and how you deploy it. So just some things to think about for resources. But let's go ahead. We've gone way over today. So let's do 15 minutes in our breakout, and I'll get those started now. But if everyone can just be sure to download the breakout session notes. All right. How's it going?
Pretty good. I forgot to take notes or ask anyone to take notes, so I kind of got them in there last minute.
Okay.
So it's not really robust as it usually is.
No, that's good. It's good to at least have some things to work off of later. Were you all in the same group?
We were, yeah.
And what kinds of things were you talking about?
Basically how to prepare for it, right? Like where you need to get buy-in, who you need to get buy-in from, right? I mean, I can speak to mine, which is designing phase should last a hell of a lot longer than people often give it, because rolling out a half-baked product is not a great way to get that buy-in.
Nice. Yeah. Jillian, I don't know if you're back here yet. I noticed over in the chat, you were talking about brainstorming sessions. Were you talking about that? Like, would you bring in all the CSMs together?
Yeah. And using, like, I think it was mock-ups that we had, and I just kind of had a template. And so had a bit of an intro, but it was pretty loose in terms of, like, it was also because we didn't necessarily have budget yet, even for the CSP. So it was like, this is to make sure we have everything in place ahead of time in terms of like scorecard or parts of the scorecard, let's say. Just where people saw the gaps, and it was a total open-ended brainstorming session, and then I could take that away, and that way everybody felt like they had input and kind of go from there.
Nice. That's a great way to involve people. What are some of did anybody have like an aha moment or a big takeaway, something you want to share that we didn't cover before going into the breakout groups?
Yeah, one thing I share with my group, this is Ron,
Mm-hmm.
The cross-functional alignment, we talked a lot about the kind of internal to the CS team, but, deploying a platform, if you want the telemetry data, if you want the marketing data, if you want all of those different data points from the various systems, you got to get those teams involved. There have been deals where you close a deal, then they're like, oh, we're going to get this great data in the platform. And then engineering goes, yeah, we don't have the bandwidth for that until next quarter. So either hold off or it's just going to sit there. But if you bring them in during the decision process, you get their feedback, understand what the data hygiene requirements are, you can kind of check a lot of those boxes before it gets to paper and you got shelfware in your hands.
Yeah. Speaking from somebody who's on the sales side of the CSP side of the house, I know you want them to be successful. And so setting that up as part of the conversation, even before they sign on the dotted line, can be important. So if you're signing on the dotted line, you might want to ask some of those questions, right?
Because if you can have a playbook and say, hey, when customer hasn't logged in for this long, and we're going to do this, and we have our digital strategy, and we have all our flows. Well, if we can't get the data from the product, then we can't build the playbook. So, we spent all our time building out the playbook and the customer journey, but we never checked to make sure the data ducks were in a row. And then it can kind of really throw a wrench into the vision that we sold the team, we sold leadership, we sold everybody. Hey, this is going to be amazing. And then it's like, oh, hey, relax.
Oops, did I say that? Amazing. What other sort of insights, Sandy?
One other thing that I was thinking about, we're putting a lot of pressure on the CS leaders to do this. I think the CS leaders can actually push back on the vendors to say, what can, we don't want to buy too much tool, right? Like Kristi said, right? Don't go too big, do things with the free tools that you have. And I totally agree with that approach. what I'm thinking is when you're looking to evaluate a tool, you should really think about tools that actually gives you the flexibility. So Ron and I and Divya were in the same group, and we thought, what if they could just give us the capabilities that we need right now, and then don't charge us for this. And I said, I'm allergic to, buying for stuff that I don't use. Although there's lots of stuff in my house I don't use. But the point is, we should push back on our vendors to say, I'm glad you have this whole end-to-end suite. Can you just let me license this part and push the vendors to do better?
I mean, a platform, I don't know if you can take apart a platform, right?
Yeah, that's the sad thing is
Yeah.
I wish I could do that. What you can do, Sandy, though, is some solutions actually have the ability to disable things on the back end. So for example, on client success, you could turn certain modules off. And so I don't think that it's like, these wouldn't be make or break from a pricing standpoint, trust me. So it's not like the investment on any of these things. But if you feel like certain things are distracting the team from adopting this solution, or you feel like it could be overwhelming, turn things off. So we have a lot of customers who initially, when we're kind of getting them rolled out, we'll just disable things on the back end. And then we just constantly remind them like, hey, don't forget, there's a bunch of stuff in global settings that you can enable when you're ready. Or, when the CSM has realized that they've adopted what they have in place, go and turn those things on. So to Jan's point, I don't know other solutions intimately enough to say, can you break it apart and modularize everything and sell them as individual kind of features and functionality? But you can find ways to maybe hide things. So at least the workflow that you're desiring there exists.
Yeah.
Good point.
Any other sort of things that we should share that maybe we didn't talk about before going into the breakout room?
Ooh, can I go?
Yeah.
Garbage in, garbage out. Did we talk about that? When we started to talk about that, like, oh my gosh, can you please not buy another piece of technology if your data is garbage? One of the things that I started doing is just like pushing our customers. Can you vet all of your data, right? So everyone wants to have this centralized view, but I'm like, cool. Are you buying this platform because your Salesforce data is a mess? Because if you are, then you're trying to integrate that into ours. You're just going to have two messy platforms. Right. So I would just say, like, encourage anybody. And that's, anytime you're doing any work with any technology and you're integrating it, just be sure that whatever you're plugging in or pushing out, it's good, it's clean, and it's accurate.
And in fact, the best practice is a couple of years ago when I was in interim, and part of what we were doing was helping them choose a tool and bring it in. While we were going through the process, we were doing the requirements gathering, we were figuring out which tool and all of that. We started figuring out which parts of the data needed to be cleaned up. And we just turned everything into a weekly project. And the CSMs then would spend, 20 minutes a day doing different parts of, cleaning up the data. Each week there was a different thing. And so maybe they couldn't put 20 minutes in today, maybe they did 30 minutes, on 2 other days, but they figured out how to clean up the data that they needed to, so that we'd be ready once we were going to do the tool.
Yeah, you need to have some governance over that. And I know that a lot of organizations, as they get bigger, if you have RevOps and things like that, I'm sure there is some governance around your major systems like your CRM. But if you don't have that today, to Jan's point, like you can clean it up in bite-sized pieces, find out what are the most important pieces of data that you're going to need access to. But please, please, please vet your data before you just start plugging things together.
Yeah. I would say that ties back to my previous point, but I wouldn't put it on the CS team to clean up the data.
Well, it depends on the data.
It depends on what the data is.
Yeah. Sometimes it's the CS team
remember,
that didn't.
Nobody owns the customer, so nobody owns all of the data. Everyone's got to do their part, right? Everyone's got a little bit of data.
Yeah. And I've yet to see a Salesforce instance that is clean, by the way. So if you're waiting on a clean Salesforce instance, you might as well just go ahead and start using Google Sheets and tracking on Post-it notes. So, but I mean,
can we strive for clean-ish?
Clean-ish is probably, that's probably good. We could go clean-ish, but I mean, and that's the other thing too. And it's just like you said, garbage in, garbage out. The other thing is you don't bring everything in. Like that's one of the things we see a lot of people just go, okay, I'm going to bring the whole house in. And you're like, but you don't need the whole house. You only need these handful of pieces of data in order to do what you needed to do. Do that first. And like you said, in that process, let's make sure it's clean coming in. Then you can expand on it from there. So.
Yeah. And that's also times when I've worked with teams, we've kicked off sort of a sales to CS handoff process where sales needed to input certain types of data and do some cleanup, even on current customers where only they knew what the contacts were, kind of things. Like if somebody is hoarding the data, then there's got to be, that's part of getting that buy-in, right? Where they will only go and take that time to do that cleanup. If it is all in their head, then you need to get the sales leader and other folks buying into why we need this sort of whole post-sales motion and supporting it through the CS platform. So excellent. Any other thoughts? Yeah, Julie?
One thing that we talked about at the very end was kind of this epiphany that everything we're discussing today and what makes this such a good topic is that this is literally what our customers go through.
Mhm.
Everything that we are dealing with from a customer success side is change management, helping customers to buy into, use, and actually gain value out of our product. And so I think looking at it from that reversed perspective of what are the things and how can we use this experience that we're going through to do better for our own customers? So different advice around implementations of how can we make this smaller. So instead of maybe training on every single piece of every single thing that our product can do, how can we get them started to say, hey, here's where you need to start so that you can start seeing value immediately, or let's talk through what your goals are, what you're trying to accomplish, and let's right size this for what you're trying to do or what you need to do. And it's the same thing with any tools that my team adopts of what are we trying to accomplish? What's the long-term vision? And then let's work backwards of where can we start today to add value to our customers and our company and alleviate and help our team. And so I think it's like really tying to the goals, the vision, and all of that and tying it all together. But I just thought that was kind of a fun ending that we had to our group discussion, was just how relatable all of this is to what our customers go through.
Yeah, that's a really good point, is how do we take these learnings from when we're changing our own tools and applying that to our customers? Because that's what we're doing with them every day, is they're changing tools. They're going through this change management. That's such a great point, Julie. I also noticed just over on the side, Trevor, I don't know if this was a question that you were going to come off mute from before, or if you want to come off mute, or we should just read from the chat.
My question was completely different from what I'm talking about right now.
Okay.
Yeah, my question back when we were still in the presentation is like talking about the difference between CRMs and CSPs.
Mm-hmm.
It's fairly, at least in my process right now, it's fairly easy to argue for something like a CRM because we don't have like the base level data that a CRM kind of provides, or at least tries to get us towards. What's hard is then saying, okay, we've got the CRM, now we need a CSP. And because like, depending on which CRM it is, you can track things from sales through, the continual relationship waterfalling down into all the different areas. So for me, I struggle sometimes to know, like, one, when a CSP is useful, and two, how to argue that it's useful.
Any last thoughts on that? Either Kristi, both?
Prove you can't measure it anywhere else.
Yeah. Go ahead, Kristi.
Okay.
You look like you're about to say something.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know, but I hate always being the first one to speak. I know. I know. These are exciting topics. Okay. First of all, these CRMs, they manage data and workflows linearly because they manage it against the sales process, right? Like, guess what? Customer lifecycle management is not a linear process, right? We don't go from A to B to Z. It just doesn't work that way. These tools, these CSPs are designed for life cycle management, right? For allowing you to be nimble and agile on how you're managing the different things that are taking place with your customers over extended periods of time. To Chris's point, and it's probably one of the most powerful ways I've heard this articulated, but the CRM is what did you say? It's the system of record, and then you've got the CSPs, system of action. I've like never heard it more clearly articulated ever. And that's the truth, right? I've never seen Salesforce tell my CSMs what to do, when to do, and how to do it. But guess what? Our CSPs nail that every time. They are designed to do that. And so it's not enough to just have data to inform your teams. Your teams need to know what to do, how to do it, right? You're trying to operationalize workflows to drive specific outcomes, and your CRMs do not do that. Now,
Right.
I'll tell you, I also have some customers who don't have a CRM and only have a CSP in place. We are their CRM, and they've made that decision because that's the way they started. They said, you know what? We are a small company. We've got a few dozen customers. We don't need Salesforce. We don't need HubSpot. We don't need these big, heavy, expensive technologies yet. We're going to start with a CSP because guess what? We want to start by managing our customers. Like that's what we're doing. So they actually have their customers in the CSP, and like that's how they're managing, and that ends up being their CRM, their source of truth. Especially with our solution, you can manage revenue, you can manage everything in one place. So you don't need another place to manage opportunities and account records and all of that. Our solution does all of it very simply. Now there will come a place where you're going to have complex workflows. You might need it, but depending on where you are in your journey, you could justify having that maybe instead of to start.
Right. I guess I need more exposure to them. So any of you who have used them heavily, definitely chat with me sometime.
Yeah, over in the Slack, just continue the conversation there. That's what we use the Slack for. And so let's, everyone help and weigh in on that and help Trevor there. Post your question there too, Trevor. Chris, anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I mean, Kristi covered it great. I mean, I think the key thing is, well, I said no, and then I'm going to tell you that I think the key thing, I mean, and you said it perfectly, which is, it isn't a linear journey, right? We all know that there's going to be off ramps. There's going to be things that you need to do and how you build out what that journey looks like. And if it is, from here to here, it's not, I'm going to say it's not a good journey, because most of them don't end up that way. If it does, that would be awesome, but it's just not true. So, again, I think the key thing is if you're trying to validate the use of a CSP, then you need to be looking at, again, starting with those outcomes. What is the value that you're getting out of it? The retention, the growth in the customers, all those kind of things. And many of those are lagging indicators, but visibility on what customers are doing and efficiencies on how your team's managing and working. Those are all metrics that you can share to executive team and to board if you need to, that let you know and let them see the value of the tool that you're using. And so, as you're launching a CSP, or if you're using one, reach out to Kristi, to myself, to whoever it is that's the leadership of that team, and they can help you work through what the value prop is for that and how to show that value. Because if we can't do that, we're not doing our job, so. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much. We did go over, but I appreciate for the folks who stayed to the end, and really appreciate it. Next week, we're going to be talking about a different type of change. And it's going to be about your branding and your elevator pitch and your intro if you are looking for a new role. And so how do you introduce yourself in an interview, or when you are introducing yourself with your business or the role that you have with a customer. And coincidentally, they all have the same sort of elements. So look for that when I'm posting. I'll put it over in Slack. I want you to come with your formula sort of worked out a little bit. I'm gonna give you some homework. All right, and we'll see you next week.
Jan, just quick question.
Yeah.
I saw that for next week the session is at a different time. Is that true?
It is true. It's going to be at 3 o'clock Pacific, 6 o'clock Eastern.
Dang, yeah, definitely.
A whole hour and a half earlier.
I know. I'm sorry. You could have done that this week. You could have done that this week. All right.
There you go, Kristi. The right time for you.
Yeah.
Like 4 a.m. When are we going to do a session at 4 a.m.? That's what I want to know. Who is starting their day strong?
Yeah.
4 a.m.
Hey, we had someone join from 3 a.m. last session.
Yeah, we do.
Where's Mohammed?
Jordan,
he's in Jordan. Yeah, he didn't call into this week, but we'll get him the
he joined at
recording.
like 3 in the morning, and we were like, oh,
okay,
wow,
so that's serious. Okay, so I have nothing to complain about. I'll go take my melatonin a little bit later tonight.
Yeah. Eat some cheese, go to sleep. It'll be good.
All right. Thanks
everybody.
So much.
Thanks, everybody.
This was awesome. Thank you guys for having us.
All right.
Yeah,
Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of Success Hour, formerly known as CS Office Hours. We regularly put out new content, so to be the first to know, like this episode, tap that notification bell, hit that subscribe button, and we look forward to seeing you soon.